Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us again today. And, I'm extremely excited for today's session. We're going to be learning a little bit about Sandeep and his author journey. Sandeep, how you doing today? Good morning.
I'm doing well. Omar, how are you doing today?
I'm excited. I love your shirt. You've got a dinosaur shirt on. What does it say?
Oh yeah, it's a shirt I think we wore for my daughter's first birthday. It's called Daddy Saurus.
Da- Love it. Daddy Saurus. There you go. There you go. Well, we're going to jump right into it today and we're going to be talking about you and your journey to become an author. You have some books published. They're in the kid space. And we were having a chat and I was like, how? Like, where do you get the desire? Where do you even start writing? How do you start writing? When do you start writing? I'm made of questions and I want to learn. So, I thought we could take some time to better understand what your journey's been like from an author perspective. And if it's okay with you, I want to jump right in.
Oh yeah, sure. Loaded question there. So yes, I've written two children's book, but I'll talk about the first one and how it all got started. So so I think it all started with like a desire to write, and I think I always had that as a creative person, but you don't have to be creative to write. I always had that. It was a goal of mine to write something, and I just didn't know what. And this sort of feeling was it lasted like 30 plus years, right? I didn't have my first kid until I was like 34, 35. So this lasted for a long time, and I just didn't know what to write. Um, and 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 I back then, like a couple of years ago, like I'm 39 now, so like in my in my 20s and 30s, I've always had ideas and I was just an idea machine. And I just
An idea
usually
machine.
usually never took action on those ideas. Like I would think of them, and if you're like me, if like I was back then, you probably think of the ideas, you don't do anything about it, and you just like hope that things will just fruition, but it's not the way it works. And so like what was different this time around is the birth of my daughter, and I'll get into that in a second. So before around that time, the birth of my daughter, I always had like a morning routine. I get up, do some breathing exercises, meditation. I would go for a walk, and I just clear my head in the morning before the day got started, and
That's
then
such
I
a
would
great
go
way
to
to start the
work.
day. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. What a great way to
yeah,
start the day.
definitely, and it's something I highly recommend, and I'm always trying to get back into. But with two kids now, it's just it's a bumpy road. But I'll always try to make time and try to find time to like get back into my routine. Um, so like I was saying, like when my first kid was born, everything got disrupted. Um, and I was no longer waking up for my early morning workouts or anything like that. It was just like survival. Uh, and and now I was getting up at like 3:30 a.m. to like do feeding. And my wife and I would take turns doing that. So there was that. But what I learned was when I went back to sleep after that feeding, like you're up for an hour at 3:30, you go back to sleep at 4:30, you wake up with, at least I did, with this massive headache, and it was just ruined like my morning and most of my day. Like it was hard to manage,
Yeah,
especially
definitely.
especially with a newborn. You don't know what to expect, and you're like going through the motions, and then all of a sudden, life is just disrupted. And waking up at 3:30 to do this feed, you're like sleeping, and then you go back to sleep, and then you wake up like at 6, 7 again, and it's killer. So
Yeah.
I so what I think what my daughter inspired me to do was stay awake after the feed. And I used to get up early, like, but I used to get up around
That,
like 5, but now I'm getting up like, okay, 3:30 to 4, and I'm going to stay awake. And so that was how life was like about 5 years ago. And then I decided, like, what am I going to do up? So, I do I would occasionally do like the workouts and the breathing exercises and all that, but like not always, just because like I was exhausted myself. So
yeah.
I would pull out a notebook, and my wife bought me this notebook a couple of years ago, but I never really put it to good use. And I just thought, okay, let me just write down one word. And
Yeah.
I don't know what I was going to write down. I don't know whether or not it was going to be like a journal entry or my name or, a story or something, but I just wrote down one word. And then one
Yeah.
word led to two words. And then two words led to a couple of more. And then a paragraph. And then I didn't know where it was going. But then I started to develop, ideas. So I started writing down ideas and then concepts. And then I'm like, hey, why don't I just start getting into writing? And so I think that's how the process started with my first children's book.
Yeah.
And for the next few months, I spent time writing and rewriting um, a story based on the characters of my daughter, and we had a cat. So we have a
Yeah.
cat. So my daughter and my cat. Um, and and I and then I started thinking, okay, I'm gonna write this story, and these words are coming out now, but I need something to base it around. Like, what's it going to be based around? And one
Yeah.
common thing that I thought at the time, like I was just a new parent, but I thought at the time, children go through fear a lot as they develop in age. And I thought maybe fear was a good topic to write about. And at the time, I was also knee deep into like self help. So I was going through a lot of like mindset shift myself. So I was listening to a lot of like self-help gurus like Tony Robbins and Bob Proctor and people like that to like help change the mindset, of like where I wanted to go in life. And you know, um so so I sort of like combined all of that, and I started thinking, I'm like, what can I write a kid's book with, like a healthy mindset sort of approach? And and fear came along, and then I was like, okay, so how do I break this down into simple words? So like, if I can think of something scary, then I can think of something not so scary, is what I
Yeah.
came up with. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this might work. What's scary in a kid's life? Well, when I was growing up, the basement was scary, right? So the basement was dark, scary. You didn't know if there were spiders and monsters, and you walk down but you run back up, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the basement was a topic. So I created this book where I was talking about the basement, and like the the, the story sort of goes like my daughter and her cat were playing, ball went in the basement, and my daughter was too scared to go, but my cat acted like a guide for my daughter, helped her through the process of fear, helped her walk down, promised her there was nothing to be scared of. Even though we realized in the book that there were a couple of things that did make her afraid, like there were spiders, there were like loud noises, um, there were
Yeah.
shadows and things like that. But uh, my cat helped in the book narrated that, like there's a reason behind all of those. So once you understand the reason, monsters are only in movies. Spiders, well, I made
Yeah.
the spider a talking spider. So it just like dissolve the pain a little bit, dissolve the fear a little bit. So that's how the book was written, and I wrote it probably like 4 or 5 times after that. I just wasn't satisfied with like how it was coming out, and it was my first book, so I was just trying to make it perfect. Um, and I hired an illustrator off of Fiverr back then to help me do the illustrations because although I'm creative, I love design and art. I don't really know how to draw, and I didn't think I was the right person to draw this, illustrate this book. Um, so I hired someone off of Fiverr, and I pieced it together, with my knowledge of Adobe software. But honestly, you could do it with Word. You don't need expensive software to do any of this. And
Yeah.
I published it. It was a 4 month period, and I published it around probably like Christmas Eve in 2018. And I told it was an exciting time for me. I was like, wow, I actually did this, and I put my mind to it in a single focus, and I went for it, and I did it, and I was like really proud of myself. At the same time, like I think my family and friends were really proud of me, and I got to read it to my kids. um Actually, now that I have two kids, I read it to them now as they're older because I didn't realize at the time, but it was actually written in a way that it made sense to them at this age, 3 to 5. So they're into it now, and my friends and their kids were into it, and whenever they saw my child, they would be like, oh, she's the star of this book, and it was cool to see. um And I've also done like readings at my kids' school now, and I have an upcoming reading at a community center coming up like November 5th, I think, at Milton Sports Center. So I'm going to be doing that also. Um, I've never really been the one to like go out and do readings and things like that, but like I'm just trying to push myself and get myself out there and just promote this thing. And the goal will eventually be to write more, include more of, like if I can, friends and families of my kids. So trying to make this universe kind of like a Marvel universe for my kids and stuff. And so when they grow up, they can like look back at these books and be like, oh, I was a character in this book, I was a character in that book, and and just share more lessons, life lessons about you know building a strong mindset together. And yeah, and that was my journey, and in a nutshell. And if you have more questions, I'll be happy to answer you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And yeah, you know what a phenomenal journey. And just to summarize here, I think, you didn't like getting up in the morning. You got up at 3 o'clock with a headache, and then you started to use that sort of that entire situation to say, how can I make it better for myself? And then you started to stay up a little bit later in the morning, and you're like, what do I do with that time? I'll stay up after 3 o'clock after I fed my child, but I want to make use of that time. And what I'm hearing from you is you just started with words, singular words that you put on a piece of paper, and those words continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. We've talked about fiber in our last session, and it sounds like you've employed someone from fiber because you knew that you're good at the writing, you're good at the creative, you're good at putting the words on the paper and then coming up with what that story looks like. But you needed someone to help you with some of that visual aspect of it. So I love that we've talked about fiber in one of our sessions, and you use fiber as well. And I absolutely love the basement is a scary spot. When you think about it, even I'm scared. I don't
Yeah,
want to tell my age. I don't want to date myself here, but even when I go to the basement here, in my current house, I think I'm like, oh God, what are the noises? What's
yeah,
happening? Is that dripping coming from somewhere? Worry about the spiders. So, the basement can be scary. So I love that that's what your premise was, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly, right. Like I'm still not easy about the basement either when it's dark.
Right? Well, tell me something. How do it sounds really simple, right? When you say that you were putting, you woke up in the morning, you put one word, then it followed more words and more. How does someone get into that space of taking that one word and making it into more and more and more and more words?
Yeah, I thought the same thing, and it was just like, once you start one thing, I think it's something like a 5-second rule or something, like you do something for 5 seconds, but it's never going to ever last 5 seconds. Or I think it was a 1 minute rule. You do something for 1 minute, something you've been putting off forever, or something that you want to try, and you just do it. And it really works. It just sort of gets the ball in motion. And then after that 5 seconds, 1 minute, whatever it is, it's kind of like, yeah, you don't want to stop. You just want to continue and finish the thought process. So by you doing that, you're actually starting the habit. And I did that every morning for a couple of weeks, and it built a new habit. So they say like 21 days to build a new habit. So I really believe in that, and that worked for me. So yeah, if you're ever wondering about writing a book or trying something new, just get started where you are, whatever situation you have in life right now. Like nothing has to be perfect. Just get it started, and you'll see that it might lead somewhere. It might not. You might discover that nothing is for me. This is not for me. Um,
Yeah,
or you might
it's true.
discover that you actually love this. And this YouTube channel is a great example of that too. Like we just got started with very little knowledge, very little skill. You know, we spent what, an hour of this setup just trying to figure this all out because normally I feel like if I was the younger version of me, I would have probably just gave up. But
Yeah,
we kept going, we kept going, we kept going. We knew like
yeah,
we know like persistence and patience makes it. So
yeah.
yeah.
And you know what comes to mind is that I think a lot of people have initial ideas or words that they could draft on a sheet of paper here. But what really comes to mind is what did you do when you got stuck? When you wrote the first couple of pages, the first couple of words came out, and you were like, this is phenomenal. Then what? And you were completely sort of brain stuck, if you will. How did you get out
Mhm.
of that?
Yeah, writer's block, right?
Yeah, yeah, sorry.
I
I'm not a
just
writer. That's exactly how did you get out of that writer's block?
No, you call it whatever you want in any like form of work that you're trying to do. You sometimes just need a break, and that's what it was, right? Really, whenever I got stuck, I paused. I spoke to my wife about it. I'm like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? What do you think this idea? Is it better? So my wife at the time was the only one I was talking to about this book. So, you know, having feedback is good. So if you can have someone give you feedback, that's great. If you don't have anyone giving feedback, then try a few different versions of it. Mix some words up, try different sentences, try a totally different idea. And you might like the new one better, you might not. So it's just trial and error. And honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. It was just trial and error for those 4 months.
That's great advice. Thank you for sharing. And you are right. Trial and error, trying different things, it really, really, really helps. Just moving on, just to get a better grasp. I can put words on a paper. I think anybody who's listening in will be like, I could get up in the morning, feed my child, and put some words, and then if I have a writer's block, I'll try to implement some of the things that you've shared here, listen to some podcasts. But how does one even go? Like, how do you find someone to publish the book? Who do you contact? I don't even know who to reach out to,
Mm,
right? How does that process look?
that's a great question. You know what? I didn't even touch upon that, right?
Yeah.
So I actually didn't know how I was going to publish this book. I didn't know, like, I was just writing, and that was my pure focus. Just write, get
Yeah.
this book done, package it up in a nice PDF, and then figure the rest out later.
Yeah.
Somewhere near the end of that, the writing and the illustrations and putting this book together, I knew Amazon KDP was out there to publish, self-publish, but you needed to do a little bit of research, and that's another hard thing, for people to do. Like, it's like to like, oh my God, open something up new, learn about it, and then implement it. It's not easy to do. It can be numbing. I mean, it can be a roadblock in itself, right? You gotta so I had to push myself. I had to push myself to learn what the process was like, if that meant watch YouTube videos and figure out some tutorials or read some stuff. After I did that, the the fear and how built up it was in your head to do the process sort of like, diminished a little bit and a little bit more, right? And
Yeah.
so like you learn, okay, I gave this a shot. It's not gonna be perfect, I'm gonna click a few I'm gonna check off a box here and there. If I get in trouble, I get in trouble. If I don't, worst case scenario, like the book
Yeah.
won't be published. Best case scenario, oh, it's published. So I went for it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard, and we can talk about that another day. But like, the whole process of getting a book up on Amazon is not that difficult. Honestly, I've published a lot more. Not children's books, like I have two children's books, but I've done a lot
Yeah.
more other publishing, and the process is just like now it's just like a habit for me. Like I don't have to refer to anything. It's just like click, 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 done.
No, I absolutely appreciate it. And can you tell me something? Just wondering, what makes you the happiest? What brings you joy after you've published the book?
So for me, it was the fulfillment of the goal that I had set, and at the time, I was trying to do something different. So at the time, yeah, I was knee deep into like self help and how to get things done, because before that, I wasn't getting things done. I had ideas, but nothing was put into action. And so what was fulfilling about finishing this book was when I finished it, I felt something just vibrate through me, and I was just like, I can't believe I did this. I put a book out there in the world for the world to
Right?
see, and so that was a huge, self internal source of happiness for me. And then on top of that, when you hear feedback from whoever downloads the book or friends or family, um, they tell you that's an external source of feedback, like that also made me happy. And and now, like years later, it doesn't matter about the external source of feedback too much. Like I'm more, doing it almost for myself, and it's just me against me. And I want to put things out there, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, that's okay.
Right? I love that. And I want to ask you something else. What advice would you share with someone who's stuck? Not just creatively, who's, put some ideas down. They might be having writer's block. They might not be. They might have left the project not finished. They might be struggling with what to put on paper. They might be struggling with any phase of this author. What is some advice that you could share with someone who's in that situation now?
So I would probably say, going back to when I was stuck, talk to somebody. Discover, like different ideas through feedback and just brainstorm with somebody. You're not going to all have all the answers, and if you do, that's great. But if you don't, talking to someone really helps. Like Omar, you and I are a great example. Whenever I have an idea for, the next episode, I
Yeah.
text it to you, and you'll call me, and you'll talk me, you'll give me your perspective of it, and that sort of like builds upon another idea and another idea, right? So that's the way I work. I would say now, like with AI, like, go on to ChatGPT, utilize it, and say, here, I have an idea for a book. What do you think? Like, can you help me like understand if this will be like a good, valid, story to tell, for example? And it'll give you its opinion, but you take it for what it's worth. It's a robot talking to you, and you know use that as, pretend it's another person on the other end, right? And then go back and, work on your ideas again.
What a great point. And it's an opportunity to network with someone in your network. Go grab a coffee with someone and kind of bounce ideas off. And you are right. Every time you and me have a conversation on any of the work that we're going to do on YouTube, it's so beneficial. You walk away expanding your brain and thinking process. I walk away learning something different. And then we approach the episode in a collective way. So really, really good to start to help you think. And I love that you brought in use the tools that are available to you in today's society, right? We're progressing as a world, and IT and different things are available to us. So, all of it's not bad. You could, if you're stuck and you don't have friends to go hang out with, maybe you use AI to see, this is what I'm thinking, and get some feedback, because that will help sort of get you out of that writer's block, if you will, right? What is the
Yeah.
one thing that stood out to you as most exciting in the process of becoming an author, if you will? I'm going to call you an author. You have some published books now, so in my eyes, you are a published author, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, what was the question again?
What was your favorite part in the entire journey? Was it
Well,
waking up? Was it coming up with a routine? Was it contacting Fiverr? Was it getting it published? What are you like? Wow, this is so cool.
yeah,
I got to do this.
I think when it like so the writing, working with someone on Fiverr, art directing, and you're art directing like across the world. So I'm working with someone from, I think it was Pakistan at the time, so
Oh
there's a
wow.
communication, um, you know, disconnect sometimes, and there's a time difference, and you got to explain your ideas, and you're also writing at the same time. You're editing. You're trying to get feedback. Then you're working on to understand, like, the whole Amazon publishing process. There's a lot going on at the same, and you're doing this all on your free time while you're trying to, like, like you have a newborn at the same time, right? And so there's a lot going on. I think for me, like, that process, at the time wasn't pretty, but that's when you are learning the most. It's the process, it's the journey, right? And for me, like, now that what I've learned, I can do it so much faster. So, whatever's hard becomes easy soon, right? So I think for me it was the process. When I had published the book, and my friends were asking me, "Oh, when are you going to publish the next one?" I didn't do it for about four more years. I was like, "No, I'm done." Like, that's
Yeah.
it. Like, I only wanted to do the one book, and that was it. And I was okay with that. Uh, but then, like, I got the itch again, and I started writing. But I think more so than the end result, I think it was the process.
No, and that's awesome. And you got to learn, and learning is awesome. It gives you an opportunity to grow your own brain, and magic happens there, right? People don't realize it. It might seem hard, but any opportunity you get to learn, I find it's so engaging for you as a person, and it always leads to better outcomes. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for giving us a little bit of an insight into your journey with becoming an author. And I'm a morning guy as well. I will say that your routine in the morning is awesome. You got to figure out a way to keep that and bring that back into the picture. And before we say goodbye to everyone, could you possibly share some of the titles of your books so that if anybody is listening in and want to check it out, they're able to look them up?
Sure. So the first book is called Lily and Savina, I'm Not Afraid Anymore. And the second book is called Share a Smile. And they can both be found on Amazon, any Amazon platform that you're on, in any country that you're in. So you can find it there. My name is Sundeep Parmar, Sundeep Parmar. So, if you want to support a local artist or, like a local author or an author, and you found this
And
story
author.
compelling enough, yeah, if you found this story compelling enough to go out and purchase that book, I truly appreciate it and I'm grateful that you will.
Oh, and thank you. Thank you for sharing. I know that this was an opportunity for you to be a little bit vulnerable, and it's not hard talking about yourself and your own journey. There's been ups and there's been downs. You published one book, waited 4 years, writing some, finding someone on Fiverr, writing a word, and then getting writer's block. So, it's a tough journey and it's not easy to talk about. So I really appreciate you sharing it. And yeah, my friend, you are a published author. From me, just saying goodbye, wishing everyone a wonderful afternoon ahead and take care. And Sandeep, any parting words for us? Published author here.
No, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story and my story of my story. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Till next week. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.